at chapter 20. And this morning, our guests from the East Coast will have to postpone, so we'll get back to them. And in conversation with Scotty, if you were here on our Veradale UCC site earlier, you would have seen Scotty and I are working on trying to consolidate how we get to Facebook so that those on Facebook get a better experience, as well as those on GoToMeeting. We're working on it. And last night, as we were planning to do this kind of practice, I told Scotty our volunteers from the East Coast weren't available, and he said, well, Spirit number 5 could give an update. And so here he is, Spirit number 5. There we go, Scotty. So welcome to chapter 20 of the Chronicles of Corona. How are things in your part of the land of Corona?
I'm in my container, and things are fine in my container. It's a little scary out there in the rest of the land of Corona.
Yeah, so say more to that, because you actually know how scary it really is. You're seeing a lot of the data. You're working with the researchers. Tell us more about it.
So first, I want to. And first I want to tell you a little bit about me so that people can have an understanding of how to evaluate what I say. Okay, so I have a Bachelor of Arts degree. It's in music. And I was an opera singer for some time with San Francisco Opera Chorus. I've done many, many things for money. I've counted the list of jobs as probably 24 kinds of things that I've done for money. At some point, I finally had to settle down and try to, be a little more serious about my career. And in 2006, I joined a firm that does what you call preclinical work. So that's the stuff that happens in test tubes and in animals before therapeutic is delivered to people. So I learned a lot about cancer biology. I worked for the president and the chief science officer. I helped him a lot with his papers. So I edited a lot, and I worked for him for years, even after I left that company, helping him with that kind of work. That in 2008, that company went out of business, as many did, and I wound up in another company which was involved in clinical research. So that it involves, clinical means with people or in the clinic. So it was a very small company, so I was very fortunate. I got to learn about all the different kinds of things that are done in a company, like clinical operations, which is what it says, the operations of conducting research or a trial or a study. A trial is a study is not necessarily a trial. A trial is an experiment. It's more it's kind of like a square is a little more specific than a rectangle. A trial is an experiment. It's a more specific kind of study. So then there's regulatory affairs, all the interactions with the FDA, the things that they expect to be sure that things are safe. So I worked there for a period of time, and then I finally wound up kind of in an interesting position working in clinical trial disclosure. And I became, I've disclosed information, I've read reports on hundreds of studies, and just in all kinds of areas of health. And so I can't claim I'm a scientist, but I have a friend at Stanford, a colleague I work with, and I kept saying that, and he said, Scott, you have to quit saying that because you are more of a scientist than you allow yourself for. I'm telling you, I'm not a scientist in the sense that I don't have a science degree. I'm not a doctor. I'm not claiming any of that. And I'm not even claiming to know very much. I am claiming to say that what I'm doing to protect myself in the hopes that it might resonate with someone and they could think of ways to protect themselves, because in the land of COVID, in the land of where we live in the United States of America, it is more important to do that. Very much more important. People in the United States have a 4 times higher chance of dying than a person in Germany.
Dying from COVID.
From COVID. So if you are thinking about what your chances are, you do a lot better in Germany. Germany has about a quarter of the population of the United States at 83 million. The United States has about 4 times that at about 328 million. About 9,000 people have died in Germany, and about 148,000 people have died in the US. These are numbers from today. So that means that when I adjusted the populations to make them equal, or to, percentage-wise, right, normalize them on a percentage scale, it meant that 24% was the amount relative to the United States of a German person's chance of dying, 24.6%. They have a lot different attitude in Germany. It's not perfect. They don't get to be perfect, but they're more compliant. They have a better plan. They're executing it better, and fewer people are dying. Mm-hmm. That's a really big difference, even when you account for the difference in population. So if you were to multiply the 9,000 by 4, you still wouldn't be up to 40,000 people. And the United States is at almost 150,000 people. I just don't like the feel of that as an American. I don't like thinking that my risk is so much higher simply because I live in America, because of the way America operates. I mean, it's actually 5 times more likely that you would actually be infected in the United States. Now, these are only according to the cases we know. And we know that many are unreported. Many tests were not ever done. Many people were sick. They thought, well, I probably had it, so now, well, why do we need antibody testing to get a clearer picture? Some reports were coming out a few days ago saying that number could be 10 times higher, the number of people who've actually been infected. Mm-hmm. Unless you think that is herd immunity, it's not. Mm-hmm. So let's see, what else did I want to say? I was doing just a little thinking about this. So I go to the grocery store sometimes, or the drugstore, because I have a headache, and I buy a bottle of Tylenol. And if I were to take that bottle of Tylenol home and undo the box and see that the cap had been tampered with, there is no way on earth I would take it, right? We're used to thinking that way. We trust, certain things. The FDA wasn't always around. The FDA was established in 2006. It was actually largely, there was a lot of push for it. There was a book that came out by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle, and it revolves the American population, and it actually finally led to the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. And so the reason the FDA was formed was because there had been this long-standing of adulterating food and passing it off. And so what this did was meant that if you were going to do this and have it go on interstate commerce, if you were going to have your food cross state lines, that the FDA was, so this is when the FDA was established. And then there was another thing where so the calls became more and more, because the abuses were widespread. I was thinking how when I was a kid, we didn't wear seatbelts. My dad said we'd be safer without them. Mm. I remember how airbags were fought. And would you really want to buy a new car without airbags? Because someone said, well, we just don't feel like, going that direction yet. That's kind of what it was, right? So we have this way of thinking. We rely on certain things. And yet we're prone to hearing things and needing to decide what makes sense and what is true. And so what gave the FDA more teeth was a scandal in the 30s. It was
excuse me, Scotty. They started in 1906.
That's when it got started, but it didn't. It wasn't. I don't think. Yeah, that was the FDA.
That was the FDA, 1906.
But it only had so much power. It's not like it got formed and things went right away. The FDA has a long history. It's still long to tell here. I know a lot of it, but their power was still somewhat limited. And what happened was in 1937, there was this elixir sulfanilamide scandal. It caused mass poisoning in the United States. It killed 100 people, and there was such an outcry that the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was passed, and that gave a significant increase into the FDA's powers to regulate drugs. Now, I don't want to make this into a big history of the FDA. What I want to talk about is that we have come to rely in our minds on the science. The FDA was founded because we were being abused. And it has protected us. And now we don't think about whether or not we need an FDA. We pick up.
Oops, I lost you there for a moment.
Are you there?
I just lost you there for a moment.
Okay, you can hear me though now?
Yep, and the screen's a little
good.
wonky.
Good.
Hold on just a second. Hold on.
Okay.
Let's see what. Make sure my Wi-Fi here is connected correctly. Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So yeah,
I'm not sure where I stopped off, but my point was basically, like, you think about, people didn't think that we needed an FDA. People thought, I'm just going to sell my things. And
oh, sorry, Scotty, I've lost you. I'm calling you back. Hey Siri, call Scotty Patton.
Which phone number for Scotty Patton? Calling now.
Whoops, that didn't work. Well, friends there, hold on, we'll get him back. Ugh, come on, machine, help me out here. Hey Siri, FaceTime Scotty Patton.
Making a FaceTime call to Scotty Patton.
All right, hopefully we got him this time. Sorry, Scotty.
that's okay. We'll call it Corona Interrupted.
Corona interrupted. So you were talking about the trust.
I don't want to keep talking about the trust that we have in science.
Yeah.
Without thinking about it.
Right.
I just want to point that out. We all the time trust science and we don't think about it. And then, so what happens is that something scares us, and then we some people just don't trust science. They just don't trust it, and I get that. And so so I work at Stanford now, and I work with many researchers. I'm involved in research for coronavirus 19, or the SARS-CoV-2 virus and COVID-19 disease, and I'm involved in that fight. I work with many doctors. I work with many professionals. I work with many research staff. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of science. There's a lot of evidence. And it's not just at Stanford. It's all over the country. There's a lot of scientists that are looking at evidence, and they're coming out and they're making recommendations. These are really reasoned, well thought out, very hard worked for evidence findings. I mean, this is not easy work. It's boring. It's long. It's dull, and it's agonizing. And they're doing it in places where they're afraid they have to protect themselves. Science takes longer, and you think about how fast we're moving towards the vaccine. And so anyway, but the question is, like, so there's all this effort being done, and all the other side has to do is say, you're wrong. It takes no work. It takes no work at all. There's nothing behind that. But yet, when we receive our information, they seem somehow, for many people, to carry at least equal weight, or the person who says, no, you're not, you're trying to abuse us, the people who are working hard and trying to provide evidence.
You're talking about the people who disregard the science.
People who say, well, yeah, people who say it's tyranny, you can't make me, or, you know, whatever, this kind of attitude of, it's actually, it reminds me of how I used to talk to my mother when I was young. I don't mean to be insulting. I'm pointing out that it's a very easy argument to make, to say, no, it's not, or nuh-uh. or isn't or whatever it is. It takes no work, and it actually doesn't take any thought at all. All it takes is denial.
Well, the scientists are actually working and getting facts and creating data, following a system.
In every other situation, what they're providing us, and we just generally trust them. As in my Tylenol example, but you extrapolate into the thousands of decisions that make a day.
And it's okay to question, but when we question, we need to listen for answers. So it's not.
Well, we need to propose reasonable questions, and simply saying no, it's not true, is not questioning.
Right.
So here's something that I've read recently, and it says I'm keeping all the names out of this because honestly, it's not about any one person. What I'm talking about is I don't want to die from coronavirus. I don't want you guys to die from coronavirus. I'm trying to give just some perspective about what kind of information we're getting and what we're regularly used to trusting and to try and continue to trust. Mm-hmm. So against all this evidence, we've heard Dr. Fauci. If you want to hear a great thing by Dr. Fauci, look up Fauci Fireside Chat Stanford and watch that. Yeah. It was a couple weeks ago. It was not a media event. And if you want to hear scientists talking about science, then and get a real good perspective, or go to Stanford Med Live and look at July 23, and it's on YouTube. And they've got a lot of good information about evidence. And so these are like I read Stat News, I read I can't think of them all. MedWatch, just many scientific FDA notices, NIH notices. So I see a lot of things go by, and then I saw this, and it says that there's a group calling themselves America's Frontline Doctors, and they claim that there is a COVID-19 cure, and they're discouraging people from wearing masks. They assembled in front of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., and they called themselves doctors. They said that COVID, and so it was pointed out that COVID-19 currently has no cure, and multiple scientific studies have shown masks are effective in spreading the virus. So Facebook took this down for sharing false information about cures and treatments for COVID-19. One of those doctors said, put my profile and videos back up or your computers are going to start crashing until you do. You are not bigger than God, I promise you. If my page is not back up, Facebook will be down in Jesus' name. This person also...
This was a doctor? This was...
And she also says she's a minister. So this harkens back to, the fact that the rapture hasn't happened on time several times. It's like I'm wondering if Facebook doesn't come down in Jesus' name, whether or not, she's just going to change the argument to Jesus has it there because it needs to be there for me to give another message. I don't know. So that's just not to me. When I get this information in and I weigh it, I don't give that information much weight. But the other part of this article was that millions of people saw that Facebook thing, and many people are going to believe that. And people in this country are dying at a 5 times higher or 4 times higher rate than in Germany.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is not good. This is not reasonable to me. And this is my opinion. So
how could she call herself a doctor? A doctor of what?
Maybe she is a doctor. I don't know.
Wow.
I didn't do that much research into it. I'll just give her the benefit of the doubt and say she's a doctor. I mean, I've heard stories of healthcare professionals that think it's a hoax.
So doctors don't also even trust their own science. That's troubling, isn't it?
Or I don't know. So then further on this video was heavily promoted by the right-wing news site Breitbart, and we know that I'm not really very happy with any of the media right now because I think all media should be fact-checked and only put out truth. That is not happening. It's clear. But anyway, this video was also retweeted by the son of a high-ranking official in the executive office of the United States federal government.
A Breitbart quote. Yeah.
The video of these doctors, which was
Oh.
heavily promoted by Breitbart, was
Oh.
retweeted by the son of a high-ranking federal executive official
Uh-huh.
in Washington, D.C. Twitter has suspended his account for 12 hours for spreading potentially misleading and harmful information about COVID-19. The high-ranking official whose son this was said, governors should be opening up states they're not opening, and we'll have to see what happens with them.
So a threat.
May I just say, we've already seen what happens.
Mm-hmm.
We die at a 4 times higher rate. We're infected at a 5 times higher rate. I've recently heard the example that masks should be worn by those who are more vulnerable or elderly or at high risk, but that it's a disservice to the rest of us to be told to wear masks. And I just want to say that I can understand that when information goes out on Facebook or Twitter or Breitbart or anywhere, it doesn't matter, New York Times, it doesn't matter. When misinformation goes out, people will die. And I don't want it to be the person who's listening to me now. You have the power to think, you have the power to understand. There's no point in simply looking at things that reinforce my own opinion. I've had to adjust my own opinion about things. So let me just, for a moment, I'm just trying to point out like how we receive information, how we evaluate information, what we actually already trust, and what fear makes us think about new information. I trust the people who have worked their lives and done the hard work and come up with the evidence and said, I still don't know all the answers, but here's what we found. As opposed to people who say, no, that's just not true. Because there's no power behind that other than charisma or the power of voice to sway a mind that is afraid. Mm-hmm. I heard a doctor at Stanford say, be cautious, be careful, but don't be afraid of people. And I agree. If I wear my mask, if I'm 6 feet apart from people, and if I, basically shelter in place, I'm contributing to a solution. I'm not out infecting people. I'm not catching the virus. I'm less likely to catch it, I should say. You multiply that times millions of people. And so the fact that this is where I think the United States is in trouble, that our free speech is not exactly free. Yeah, you can speak, but people will die. So I mentioned before a couple of videos on YouTube now. There's streams from Stanford. One was a fireside chat between Dr. Anthony Fauci and Jean Lloyd-Minor, the Stanford School of Medicine. It was fabulous. It was just a wonderful, wonderful interview. It made me feel a lot better just to know that despite all the noise that we hear, that people are working so hard and care so much. That's the bigger story, and it's just not really hitting with the same weight because it doesn't matter which side you're on. That's not the story that's getting told. And then the other thing was that Stanford Med Live broadcast has a lot of good information. It talked about transmissibility in children. Turns out it depends on how old they are. That's the evidence they're seeing so far. But the questions that parents have, I mean, there are other things to think about, like losing a job or childcare or getting an education, or there's so many things. I wish there was a pause button on capitalism and our economy, that we could say, we're going to just hold it for a while until we're all okay again. And no one has to, it would just put it on hold. We've got enough food. We've got enough places for people to go and find a place to lie down, and we can help each other. That's not how our society is designed. We have sacrificed, in my opinion, some of our safety for the incessant need to keep going with the movement of money payment of debt, things like that. And so this leads to people dying. I really believe that if people weren't afraid they were going to lose their housing, if people weren't afraid they were going to not have to, they were going to be hungry. I'm dreaming of a world that doesn't exist. I'm dreaming of a world that potentially could be. It would be so beautiful to just see us stop and take care of each other.
And that was on public radio this morning. Is that may be where we're headed, because we are in such bad shape as of today as the United States, that the only choice may be to stop until we get control.
It's like the robots. It's like the robots that learn to attack the humans that developed them. And in this case, the robot is things like capitalism and market and things that it leads to us dying. It's very, very, very sad. It gets into so many issues. But there's the Poor People's Campaign.
Mm-hmm. They're doing good work.
And,
yeah. And they're putting forth their moral agenda very soon to change some of the structure. Well, wear your mask.
I promise. I'm here alone at home. That's why I don't have my mask. And by the way, I hope you like my haircut.
It's a great haircut. A do-it-yourself haircut.
Myself, and I'm not showing you the back because it doesn't look that good, but it's okay for video.
There you go. There you go. That's it. That's it. Well, and
stay safe, my friends.
Yeah, stay safe out there. Keep up with your work, helping those researchers get their all their documents in order so they can be certified and peer reviewed. Of course, that's another really big deal, right? Stanford does peer review. You can't just say anything because you got a doctorate. You have to prove it. Yeah.
It is a safeguard. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than not having it, because otherwise anyone could just publish anything and say it was true.
Right. And that's what's happening
too. And that's why more laws get enacted, is because those avenues continue to be tried in the system of how we develop drugs and deliver care.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being chapter 20 of the Chronicles of Corona. And we'll meet again next Tuesday with chapter 21. It means we've been together for all these weeks, each chapter another week, since we here in Washington State decided to close our buildings and to go within. And we will keep moving forward. So thank you, Scotty.
Thank
Spirit
you.
number 5.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye. So to all of you in the land of Corona, hope you are able to pay close attention to what is happening. Feel free to question creatively and carefully, and be willing to find the information. One of the things that we have is a lot of misinformation, and that's got Scotty very concerned for our world and for our neighbors, and even for those we don't like. To care and to love is to want the best for each of us. So feel free to do your research, check with reliable sources. He's given us to go onto YouTube and to watch the fireside chat at Stanford University and some of the other Stanford University programs. While he is not a medical person, he's watching and seeing all this information come across his desk as he helps people with their research process. And he very passionately cares that we care and take good care and get good information. So until next time, all peace and good be with you out there in the land of Corona. Bye-bye.